The Serpent's Tale by Toby Bennett. To the hells with your unworthy soul! The cry tore through the archway that led down to the natural cavern at the heart of the fortress. It was followed by the body of the High Zealot. The Serpent looked up in surprise at the interruption, and uncoiled his massive bulk. Most of his days were spent in quiet contemplation, and he didn't generally see anyone till the first of the month. His great body rippled, shimmering white scales flashed in the ensorcelled crystals that glowed on the wall around him. His eyes widened at the sight of the blood-splattered knight descending the long stairs. The knight's tabard was a mess, but the Serpent could discern a lily beneath the gore. Hope sprang in the Serpent's chest. Even someone living under a rock, which the Serpent literally did, knew the tales of the Knights of the Lake. The order was renowned for its chastity and prowess. Could this be the one? The Serpent grinned. The knight took the sight of those venom-slicked teeth quite the wrong way. "Back, you unholy worm!" She levelled her sword. Lightning crackled over the enchanted steel. It was all very encouraging. "I have killed your foul followers. Now I shall dispatch you." Acidic vapours rolled forth as the Serpent spoke.
"Oh, you think you can?"
the beast asked eagerly, extending his neck and lowering his flashing head to the stairs. The knight looked into the ever-shifting mirrors of his perfect eyes and froze.
"Oh no,"
the Serpent said.
"This always happens."
He drew his eyes shut.
"Does that help?"
he asked. The knight, suddenly freed, toppled down the steps and fetched up against his snout. It would have been so easy for the worm to simply open his maw, but he remained there, blind and impassive, waiting for her to recover. "I need no help from you," the knight cried. She was strong on indignity, but weak on conviction. The Serpent sighed.
"It's always the same. They burst in here, swords and spears waving, promising the world, then nothing."
The knight managed to gain something of her usual poise. "What is this, thou wretched monster? Do you seek to escape with some trick of that forked tongue? I shall not be dissuaded. Your crimes are many, and your death is sure."
"Would you were right,"
the Serpent moaned.
"I'm so often disappointed."
"Explain yourself," the knight demanded.
"It's like this,"
the Serpent said.
"You are right when you say I have committed many crimes, more than you could possibly imagine. In my youth I ate whole cities, but as I got older, I wondered at my place in the world. There was no denying that those I ate brought more to the world than I did. They were philosophers, poets, engineers, and what was I, except something that ate philosophers, poets, and engineers?"
A brilliant tear rolled down the monster's cheek.
"I decided it would be better if I died. Yet, in an eon I found no means to achieve my desire. No weapon pierced this hide, or flame burned it. No poison brought relief. Indeed, all I managed to do was to ruin my digestion."
The Serpent belched another caustic cloud.
"I decided the best thing to do would be to find a big cave somewhere and collapse the entrance. Starve myself, you see."
The knight nodded. The Serpent continued.
"Even starvation didn't work. I just got hungrier and hungrier. After a few 100 years, some dwarves dug down. I confess I was so ravenous I made a meal of them on the spot. But others followed, and for all I begged, they could not end me. Instead, they razed this fortress and called me a god. Didn't matter to me at first. I was resolved to sleep as I had before, but..."
The Serpent broke off and shuddered.
"I found I couldn't drop off, and the hunger had become more than I could bear."
The knight shifted uncomfortably. It was true that she could strike at any time, but years of chivalrous training dictated that one let an opponent finish before trying to ram 3 foot of enchanted steel down their gullet. It didn't make much sense, but as the philosopher Rosine Yorth put it, anyone who picks at the threads of their life had best know how to sew. The knight was expert with a sword, but woefully lacking when it came to needlepoint.
"Worse still,"
the Serpent carried on,
"the damage I did with all those poisons had left me rather sensitive. I discovered that for some reason I could only keep down virgins or royalty. I can't imagine why my gut got so picky, but anything else gives me the most terrible wind. At any rate, those who worshipped me were happy to oblige with appropriate offerings, though lamentably the cultists rarely fit my dietary requirement themselves. It all became embarrassingly complicated, all sorts of tests to prove you stayed in on Saturday nights, or that Grandpapa's crown hadn't been won in a card game. Not that I see much difference between a card game and a war, but the stomach wants what the stomach wants, I suppose.
The serpent paused.
There was one rather odd bunch who even tried to convince me that my new preference was...
The great scaled brows wrinkled.
Typo-pneumatic? No, that's not quite right. Though that sounds like it might have something to do with the wind, doesn't it? What was it again? Glycoasthmatic?
The serpent frowned.
Don't worry, it'll come to me. Anyway, they seem to think that 1,000 years alone underground might have done something to my head. I'm still not quite sure what they meant. I bumped into the roof of the cave any number of times, but I came down here in the first place because of my inability to self-harm. Eventually they conceded I had a thick head and let the matter drop in favour of trying to set up something they called a better therapeutic environment. In the end, the whole cult went bankrupt trying to make a leather couch large enough for me to lie on. But they were good guys for the most part. Not the lot you killed, you understand. The High Zealot and his followers were just the latest occupants. Always on at me to devour the world and destroy the unbelievers. Just the sort that deserved to end up on the wrong end of a sword, in case you were worried. I'm not even sure how virginal their offerings were.
The serpent's stomach gurgled and unholy fumes coiled up through the great cavern. Why are you telling me all this? The knight demanded as the stench began to disperse.
Only time I get a chance at conversation. The ones that come to worship are all fear and flattery. I rarely have the chance to get things off my chest. At least not since the couch cult left. Also, I thought if you knew the situation, you might give it some extra effort.
The serpent turned his head slightly, exposing the smaller scales on the underside of his throat.
We can get on with the righteous execution if you're tired of talking.
The knight let her sword droop. The enchanted blade was worn to her nub. She had already stripped off her armour and sweat poured off her, leaving dark stains on her arming doublet.
You're giving up?
The serpent asked. Have to, she panted. Can't.
As I feared.
The serpent sighed.
Thank you for doing your best, and now I must apologize.
Apologize? The knight asked.
I'm embarrassed to ask, but am I not right in saying that the Knights of the Lake are a chaste order?
Of course, the knight said. Some of her fire returned despite her exhaustion.
And no doubt someone with an enchanted sword and such fine armour.
The serpent rolled a pearlescent eye towards the knight's abandoned plate.
Must have a good pedigree?
The knight straightened still further. I am daughter of the Duke of Margrave, firstborn of the House of Elan, and mistress of the Order of the Lily. The serpent's head bobbed.
That is most impressive and wonderful to hear.
Why do you ask? The knight inquired. She started to edge towards her armour.
Well, the thing is, and as I say, you must forgive me for this height of bad manners after all your effort. Thing is, it will be a long time before another cult moves in.
It will be many a year before anyone dares, the knight boasted. When the world hears what became of the High Zealot, the followers of evil will think twice before crawling from their sunken lairs.
Indeed. So in the meantime, I can't help but wonder what I am supposed to eat.
The knight lunged for her plate mail, but the serpent was quicker. He snapped up the tired knight and swallowed her down in 2 gulps.
So sorry not to have just eaten you outright,
the serpent said as it regarded the empty armour.
But at my age, it's not just about having a sensitive stomach. You really have to look after the teeth.